Oh, thanks everyone. That was really great. So here we go. Here's the plan for the next approximately hour and 15 minutes or so. We've got a nice series of presenters and some chance for open conversation. Some of my favorite people on stage here. On the ground, lessons learned from FloodMAR implementers. We are going to start with what we're calling early adopters, but it kind of blends across. The second group of folks is more recent adopters, but really folks have been doing this work for a great long time. So we're going to start, because the stage is a little cozy. We've got 3 presenters, and then Laura's going to moderate, and we'll have some time for a few Q&As, and then we'll bring up 4 more folks to hear their stories on lessons learned from FloodMAR implementers. Around 12:15, 12:20, we're going to do a quick tabletop activity, and then we have a lunch in the room at 12:30. It's actually quite substantial. I think today is a taco bar, so lunch is about 12. I know, woo, tacos. Great. Okay, so without further ado, Laura.
Okay, thank you, Megan. And I'm really happy to be here and moderate this panel, and actually also the next one. I missed that at the very beginning. But we will be first hearing about people with a lot of experience, names that you have seen around quite a few times. And I think we will start with Adam Hutchinson from Orange County Water District. I think it doesn't really need much of an introduction. And then we have Bill Stretch from Fresno Irrigation District and Don Cameron from Terranova Range. And Don, if you want to get started, do you want the podium or whatever?
I think you're up first, aren't you?
Oh, it's Adam. Sorry, I took it the other way around. Okay.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's so great to be here. Talking about Manitowoc for recharge, it's great to see how mainstream this topic has become. You know, when I got into the industry, it was a very niche field, and now it's blowing up, especially with Sigma and the need for addressing climate change. So, can we get to the presentation? Do I have to push go? Oh, there we go. So 90 years of Manitowoc for recharge. We're like the geriatric rechargers. You know, we've been doing this a long time. Learned a lot along the way, so just wanted to share a little bit of our story. How did we get to where we are today, and what did we learn along the way? So we were formed in 1933, and the reason Orange County Water District was formed is because back in those days, there was a lot of pumping. The agriculture industry had exploded in Orange County. That's the name Orange County. And so the basins were being overdrafted. There was seawater intrusion. There was the river's flows were declining. So we were like the poster child of Sigma before there was Sigma. So Orange County Water District was formed by the state of California to come in and manage the groundwater supplies of Orange County. And now we provide 85% of the drinking water to the people in Orange County. The other 15% is imported water. And we serve 19 different cities and retailers. They are like the retailers. We're like the wholesaler. They pump the water, they pay us a fee for that water, and then they sell it to their customers, which is 2.5 million of them. So a lot of people in the area with 10 board members. And so that's just us at a glance and who we are. And we're at the bottom of the Santa Ana River watershed. Santa Ana River originates up in Big Bear Lake, if you know the area, and flows all the way down to the ocean. And we are the beneficiaries of that watershed. We're at the bottom end, so we kind of capture, like a catcher's glove, we're capturing all that water coming down to us, which is good from a quantity standpoint. From a quality standpoint, it's got some challenges. So it goes through a lot of urban area on its way down to where we are. So we're at the bottom of the watershed. And we're lucky to have this huge underground aquifer below our feet. It's up to 2,000 feet thick in some places. The total estimated water in storage is 66 million acre feet. But obviously, we can't use all that water. We can only use a fraction of it because otherwise there would be more seawater intrusion, subsidence, and other issues. So what I'm trying to show in this diagram, too, is we have a good recharge area where the Santa Ana River comes out into the floodplain. Over historical time, there's been a lot of deposition of coarse sand and gravel that the Santa Ana River has migrated over that floodplain and deposited all those very permeable sediments. It's a very good place for recharge, feeding all the different aquifers we have. It's like a 3-layer cake, shallow, principal, deep. Most of the pumping's in the principal aquifer there. We're also lucky to have the Newport-Inglewood Fault Zone. It cuts off most of the deeper aquifers from ocean water intrusion. So we're very fortunate that we have the geologic setup that we do. So because of the depositional environment, this graphic here kind of shows the best place to do recharge. And that's a lot of what the DWR is doing with all the TOTEM work, SkyTEM work, trying to figure out where are the best places to do recharge. So this is just to show where it's best to do it in Orange County. And obviously the mouth of the canyon right there where the Santa Ana River comes out onto the floodplain is where the most ideal geology is for recharge. And as you get farther out, the clay layers start to form, and you can't really do surface water recharge. You have to do direct injection if you want to do recharge in that area. So we started a long time ago. This is what the river looked like back in the 30s and 40s, and you can see it's all agriculture. Orange County was mostly agricultural till post-World War II. A lot of farms there, and so we started doing recharge in the river, and we did some vegetation removal and found out, wow, that water just disappears. Let's do more of this. So that's where we started, in the Santa Ana River. Some simple, humble beginnings. And then now, can you play this video? Got a little video kind of show what it looks like today. That's the Santa Ana River there. You can see the farms are all gone. It's all urbanized. And what we're looking at the Santa Ana River, the 91 freeway is right there in front of you. There's an off-river channel right below us. And then you can see the river continues on downstream towards the Anaheim Stadium. Now we're going to pan to the right and see what we call Warner Basin. And that's a big fishing. We lease it out to a fishing concession. And then that's our field headquarters right below there with our heavy equipment fleet. We have about 22 staff, heavy equipment, maintenance people, hydrographers. It's a 24/7 operation, so it requires a lot of maintenance and upkeep. So now we're looking upstream towards Yorba Linda area up to where Prado Dam is. So that's what it looks like today. Thank you for playing the video. And so over time, over the last 90 years, we've built about 30 different facilities covering 1,500 acres of land. And the backbone is the Santa Ana River, and then we have these off-stream recharge basins that we divert water to, almost all of it by gravity. We also have these, at the bottom of your screen, you can see the Santiago Basin, the former gravel pits that we bought in the 80s. And even though it was far away from our system, we built a pipeline to pump water up there. So it took advantage of different opportunities to buy land as they became available to build this system, which now does about 250,000 acre-feet of recharge a year. So this is really where we do our managed aquifer recharge. You notice it's all in that high colored area where all that water just sinks right into the ground and replenishes those aquifers downstream of us. So land prices, they've gone way up, as you can see, right? I mean, it's really dramatic when you see the land prices very low. Our first purchase of land was $27 an acre back in 1936. Our most recent purchase was in 2013 with $1.6 million an acre. And I would hate to see what it is today. It's even higher. So this graphic tells me two things. One is buy now. Don't wait. The second is I got into the wrong career. Yeah. So this is kind of I love this graphic because it really tells you the story of OCWD's recharge program in a graphical form over the last, 90 years or so, actually since the 1950s. So starting with 1949, that's when the Colorado River Aqueduct was finished by Metropolitan Water District. So Colorado River water became available, very cheap, inexpensive source of imported water. Our groundwater basin was very depleted. So the Orange County Water District bought over 1 million acre-feet of imported water over the course of these years. There, that blue bars you can see are imported water purchases to refill the groundwater basin because of the overdraft. So that was an opportunity that we took advantage of. Now you can see in the 1970s, that bottom bar, set of bars, is the base flow of the Santa Ana River. It starts to go up very dramatically, peaking in about 2000, 2001 or so. That is base flow. That's Santa Ana River water coming down to us from upstream. So all the development and urbanization in the upper watershed, Riverside, all those areas upstream of us, they're dumping their wastewater into the river, and we're the recipients of that water. that was a great opportunity for us. And that really drove a lot of the expansion of the system that you see, because that water coming to us 24/7. We want to take advantage of that water and not let it go to the ocean. So we started building our system and taking advantage of it. Also capturing stormwater as well in the green. Now you'll notice in the early 2000s that base flow started to drop for two reasons. One is water conservation. A lot of people are using less water. Also, agencies upstream are seeing that water as a resource. So they're using it to recycle water. They're recycling and using it for water supply in their own area. And that's continuing to this day. So base flows will probably continue to decline in the future. But the saving grace for Orange County is the purple. That's the recycled water plant that we built. It went online in 2008. Almost perfect timing. We didn't plan it this way, but it just happened to work out that as the base flows dropped down, recycled water ramped up. So we were able to replace it almost one for one. So now recycled water is really a backbone source for us. It's very important, high quality, dependable source of water that we get every day of the year. So this kind of tells you the opportunity, the opportunistic approach that we took to looking at the landscape, seeing what's available, taking advantage of those opportunities, and grabbing a hold of those. So what we have today is a very diverse portfolio of managed aquifer recharge. You can see our recycled water portion of the pie is, 38% of our total recharge into the basin every year. That's pretty phenomenal. Then we've got the storm flow recharge we do, the base flows, and we purchase some imported water. Now, Kamyar mentioned earlier about the pie. This is our pie right here. This is our water supply pie that we have. And the green at the bottom is the natural recharge, incidental recharge. So if OCWD were not managing the basin, the amount of recharge that would occur naturally would be about 100,000 acre feet. It would be the natural incidental recharge along with the river flow that would percolate naturally in the river channel. That's 100,000. That's the natural pie. This pie is 300 plus. So by using managed aquifer recharge and being opportunistic and building our system, we've tripled the amount of water we can put into the basin, thereby tripling the amount of water we can sustain on the pumping side to our producers. So I just want to let you know there's opportunities out there, there's things you can do to grow the pie and not retreat into your little room in the corner of the room and say, this is mine, I'm not going to play, like little kids do. So I just encourage all of you to increasingly look to growing the pie and not retreating, and know that it does take time, it takes commitment, it takes money, but it can be done. So the takeaways I want to leave you with is, identify optimum areas for recharge and buy it now, because land prices usually don't go down. And be nimble, look for recharge opportunities. Find out if there's stormwater, river water, imported water, recycled water. Bottled water, probably not a good idea. But anyway, I just throw it up there. And then I'll just leave you with the fact that you really need to build trust among your users and an equitable fee structure to support your managed aquifer recharge program. And I'll leave you with a final story about why this is important. So all of our retailers pay the same rate for water. Some of them benefit more than others from our programs. So for years, the coastal producers benefited from our seawater intrusion program, while the inland producers were kind of grumbling a little bit, like, why are we paying all the same rate at the coastal guys when they're getting all the benefit of your seawater intrusion program? Well, now we have a huge PFAS treatment program. PFAS has been found in our water. All that recycled wastewater we got from upstream, well, it had PFAS in it. So we've got a huge program. We're going to spend probably $1 billion doing wellhead treatment on 100 production wells to treat for PFAS. So now the inland producers are getting the benefit of all the investments we're making, not the coastal producers. And so it's just great to try and frame it up as we're all in this together. This is one basin, one water. Let's have one approach, and let's work together to make this a better place for everybody. So that's our takeaway. So hand it over to Don now.
I think it's a bill.
Oh, Bill, okay.
Good morning, everyone. That's Don's next?
Oh, Dawn.
Oh.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate the introduction. Bill and I have been friends a long time. I've been involved in groundwater recharge for a long time. Actually got started, you guys won't believe this, but back in, I hate to tell you the year, but it was 82, 83 when we had massive floods going on in California. I actually was able to talk our PG&E representative into buying a diesel booster and pump so that we could reduce electric use on the farm. They paid for the first in lieu recharge that we actually did on Terranova many, many years ago. And since then, I've seen that we needed to correct the overdraft that we had. And I have been working on it probably over 40 years to try to get where we are. It's a slow process. I just wanted to show a couple things, short little presentation here. But, we always talk about free floodwater. I've heard people talk about that in some of the state agencies. And so I put this slide together. This is based on 2023. We ended up recharging about 18,660 acre feet on Terranova alone. This was through in lieu recharge. This was flooding growing crops, almonds, walnuts, pistachios. We had pistachios in 3.5 feet of water for a long period. But what this slide demonstrates is that, when you add and take out everything, DWR was gracious enough to give us a grant for diesel boosters and diesel that lasted about a month and a half. That reduced our cost $300,000. But all in all, we ended up costing us around $48 an acre foot to get water onto the farm, onto the ground, and into the aquifer. So if anybody ever tells you this is free water and that there's no cost involved, definitely wrong. Anyway, it was an interesting exercise to see what it actually did take to get the water out of the flooded river and onto the farm and into the ground. So, some of the things we don't expect with flood-mar that we kind of realize after the fact, this nematode sample came from one of the basins that we flooded for probably February to early July. The next year, we went in to grow a carrot crop, and we always take nematode samples because nematodes are terrible for carrots. You get forked carrots, you get all kinds of problems. And we had no parasitic nematodes in the samples, and this is taken from, about 7 or 8 different sites within the basin. And for me, that's a real plus because, number one, fumigating in California is a very difficult operation. The restrictions and the buffer zones, everything that goes along, and like I say, the expense is pretty high. So, this was one of the unexpected results that we saw. And then this is a 5-year graph of water levels. This is near where we had 3 basins. And you'll see July on the left side, July of 22, we were down to 247 feet below the surface. 2023, we increased 19 feet. We went up to 228 feet. And this is seasonal, this is typical. We see our lowest levels in the middle of July, our highest levels in early spring. And so this constant pattern, but what you'll see is the lows are now essentially 10 feet higher than they typically had been. And to be honest, I did not expect this. I thought we were going to see a big increase, in the year that we were flooding, and then probably, we'd go back to where we were prior to that. Our GSA, about 110,000 acres, entirely groundwater pumped. So Sigma is a very prominent discussion. And so being able to see that not only do you do a short-term correction, but we saw water continually re-entering the aquifer and maintaining a higher water level. And for me, you pick up 10 feet, that means your pumping costs are going to be less, your water quality is going to be better, and long-term, you're going to be sustainable. So we have another graph very similar to this near some other basins that we have, and it's identical. So what I thought was going to be a one-year blip is turning into a long-term increase in groundwater levels. And you can see the highs were much higher. On the far left, we're just seeing better recovery long-term. And this is, like I say, our pumping really hasn't changed since that's our water source. But we see long-term, better sustainability. We're going to watch this. We're putting in more. We have monitoring wells throughout the ranch that we are monitoring other areas. And when you get away from, 5 miles away from here, you see a typical, much lower level of water during the summer, and the increases are nowhere near this. So it's been successful. We're really happy. We want to continue, which we will. We have our infrastructure, and we're talking about within our GSA about a 13-mile extension of our project to include another 20 to 30,000 acres. So, Bill, you're up.
All right.
I know you're next.
All right. Got to put my timer on. I'm an engineer by nature and got to keep myself in check here. So this is my third FloodMAR forum. Happy to be back, second as a speaker. And I've been with the district for 27 years, last 7 as a general manager. And I put our mission statement here. I think this is FID's original mission statement back in 1920, is to protect and manage surface and groundwater resources for the present and future use of the people and the lands within the district. They nailed it in 1920. It's pretty amazing. Just FID at a glance real quickly. We're a very large district, 250,000 acres. We were formed in 1920. We're very old though. The infrastructure was built in the 1870s, 1880s. We're on the east side, so traditionally there was a lot of smaller farms. The average farm size when we were created was 20, 25 acres, a lot of mom and pop farmers. Fast forward to today, we're a little bigger, not much bigger. We have a lot of customers, 8,000. We have 2,800 active turnouts. We have a very large urban influence with Fresno, Clovis, and Kerman now is growing. We have 4 surface, those cities have 4 surface water treatment facilities off our canal system. So we had a change over time, and now we deliver water to those cities year round. That was a very big change for us about 20 years ago. Cost of water is relatively inexpensive. Everybody in this room, that's going to mean something different, but what it works out to be is about $50 an acre foot to our growers and our cities. They pay exactly the same. Right or wrong, that's how we have it worked out in our irrigation district. An average irrigation season is 5 months. So for most years, that's not enough surface water to provide growers what they need. So that means every single farmer has a well. We deliver on average 2.2 acre feet per acre. Most crops are somewhere between 3 to 4 acre feet per acre. Just a little graphic here of FID showing the urban influence right in the middle of our district. So that creates all kinds of challenges and opportunities. We bring in about 500,000 acre feet of water through multiple supplies. Our primary supply is off the Kings River coming out of Pine Flat Dam. That reservoir is twice the size as the other river system, San Joaquin River. Millerton Lake, that's 520,000 acre feet. So again, 250,000 acres in total. About 60% is ag, 30% urban, 10% rural residential. Of the 150,000 acres that is ag, is primarily permanent. 70% of our crops are permanent. Almonds, vineyards, and citrus are our top 3 crops. You guys, probably most people in this room have seen this conjunctive use and water cycle diagram. It's somewhat tailored for our area, but it's we've always espoused to the idea of conjunctive water use, which I'll just boil it down to, in those wet water years, we need to take really big gulps of water. And so how we used to do that was we would extend our irrigation season, allow our farmers to keep taking that surface water, keep their wells off, and send more water to the cities. And and that builds up a plentiful and healthy groundwater aquifer, both in volume and in quantity. And so that's this conjunctive use idea has been around for a long idea, and we continue to build off that. There's been a lot of talk about working collectively and working with neighbors, and that's not typically been the strong suit of irrigation districts. But as the city of Fresno and Clovis grew and continue to grow, and I've seen engineering reports that go back to the 30s and 40s and 50s, the groundwater aquifer was rapidly declining under those cities. There was a huge cone of depression. And so, and as those areas were coming out of farmland and being urbanized, there was also a loss of income to our district because we used to detach and de-annex them. That all changed in 1975. It's a win-win. The city then gained basically a water allotment from FID, and they built the first recharge basin within our boundary. And it wasn't 1930s, like they have it going on down there in Orange County, but it was 1971, 200 acres, Leaky Acres recharge facility. And then fast forward after that, we also, something special or somewhat unique to the Fresno Clovis area, we have a floodwater agency, the Fresno Metropolitan Floodwater Control District. So back up a few years, you see all the flooding going on up and down the valley. You didn't see Fresno or Clovis in the news, and that's because of our flood control agency and the amount of infrastructure that they've built over the last 40, 50 years. We play a major role in that. I'll talk about that shortly, but I did want to point that out. So fast forward to today, talking about collectively recharging and how many basins we have in our area. So the flood control district, they have approximately 100 basins that are dual use, flood control in the winter months and groundwater recharge in the spring, summer, early fall. The city of Fresno and Clovis, they have 4 basins, and FID, we've really ramped this up in the last 20 years. We're at 37. So collectively, we're at 2,700 acres of recharge basins. That note in blue, so we've recharged collectively 840,000 acre feet in the last 20 years. And so just put that number in perspective, the 2 reservoirs where we obtain water from, Pine Flat is just at 1 million acre feet. Millerton Lake is half that, or 520,000. So just to put that in perspective, on average, we deliver 500,000 acre feet a year, but we were able to capture and recharge 840 in the last 20 years with our partners. The question of when, at what point did we start really focusing on recharge? It took me a second. I've been with the district for 27 years, so it was 1998. I'm sorry, I think I went. It was 1998, And we were already doing groundwater recharge at that time, expanding recharge basins. I was trying to think, why were we doing that at that time? Sorry, that must be something I've done with this presentation here. So from 1920 to 1995, we had over 25 basins or so, but they were regulation only. And so and I don't even know that we use the term recharge as a secondary term. But I'd point to some laws that were passed by the state. In 1992, the AB 3030 Groundwater Management Act, that was passed in 92. And then 10 years later, the Integrated Regional Water Management Act, IRWMP, passed in 2002. And tied to those acts being passed, there started to be a lot of funding through grants that were being pushed out by the state and by the federal government. FID was very aggressive in going after it, and we were very successful early on, and that helped propel us to keep building and building and building. And in 95, I have here near the end of the slide, kind of between 95, 2005, there was definitely a recognition amongst my board, previous management, that this was the way to go. That there was a general belief that things were changing. There was probably going to be some groundwater laws coming down the road that would require us to do more. Our groundwater levels within our district were continuing to decline, not just in the urban area, but the ag area as well. And so we were doing everything we could to capture every drop of urban water that's pumped into our canal system that we keep within our boundary footprints, capture more floodwater off the San Joaquin and Kings River, and also we have 7 natural creeks that flow into our district. Okay, slide, I'll finally go to the next one. I should also mention, so when I arrived in 1998, when we had floodwater, the urban pumping, they pump into our canal system, we would route it outside the district. We would route 100% of that outside of our district. We would not capture one drop of that. Why? Because we are working on our canal system, old district, old infrastructure, old canals. And so fast forward to today, completely opposite. We try to capture every single drop, keep it within our boundaries. And so that it didn't take long to make that shift in time. I apologize for these slides, but that's my bad. Obviously, I didn't have somebody help me with this. I think I'm down to 2 minutes here, 3 minutes, thanks. One big change we made, talking about partnerships, groundwater banking. It was in the early 2000s. We partnered with the city of Clovis. They had a need to expand growth, or they wanted to expand growth. They wanted to partner with us to develop a water supply for them. We ended up building 240 acres of recharge basins. It took us a few years to execute that. So the district didn't pay $1 for this site. Clovis paid for 50%, grants paid for the other 50, and that's when we got really into the groundwater recharge business, and we haven't looked back. And for the district, what we also got out of that is we needed an additional revenue stream. Aging infrastructure, we wanted to build more recharge basins, and we wanted to keep our rates low to our growers and to our cities. We have a lot of disadvantaged communities, a lot of small rural residential folks, trying to keep those rates very low. Fast forward to today, 2021, kind of post Sigma, as we did some studies, is like, you know what, there's more water to capture, let's go out. We took out a bond. Land prices, at least in our area, we're at an all-time high in ag areas. About $40,000 an acre was kind of the going price. I think I'm down to my last minute. I'll just close out by saying, in the past 20 years, how much money have we spent and what have we accomplished? So $66 million were spent on investment in recharge basins, interties. So that's a lot of money, but as Adam talked about, you got to start somewhere. Land's only going to increase in price. Construction costs are only going to increase. You got to start. And so we were very successful having partnerships and getting grants that defrayed a lot of those costs. So out of pocket to FID was $39 million over the past 20 years. Works out to be about $2.3 million a year, which we could stomach. And so a rule of thumb that we use all the time, and there's an ask here at the end for whomever will listen, is that we need a willing seller when we build these recharge basins. Most farmers don't want to sell their land. So if you're asking them for their land, you got to make it worth their while. So you're going to have to pay above what the going rate is. That can be a little bit challenging. We want them next to our larger canals that convey runoff water or flood water. Soil types generally conducive in most of our districts, so that's not too big of an issue. And we want larger parcels. Total project cost in our area to build these projects, $120,000 an acre. That includes buying the land, engineering, inspecting, construction, all of it. It takes us 2 to 3 years, so we can build these projects fast. And I think that point should not be lost on this group or anybody who will listen. Everybody in this room who builds these types of projects, we can do this fast. If you get grants, though, it's probably going to delay the project by a year. That's just what comes with the strings attached that come with it. So we need more state and federal funding. The water is there, the infrastructure, a lot of that infrastructure is already there. Most agencies, water agencies, we do need several shots in the arm of additional funding to complete these projects. And we're going to continue to work with partners and other folks to figure that out. So thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. And I think the idea now is to open it up from the audience and see what are the key questions. Otherwise, I will jump in with questions. Oh, looks like. Just a second.
Presentations, they were good. I just have a question. So, you explained some of the costs of developing the recharge basins, but floodwater, of course, always has sediment and other associated constituents with it. So how does that play into the longer term, economics of operating the basins and providing the water?
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, floodwater is not free, that's for sure. So when we do take floodwater, it clogs our basins rapidly, and so we have to take our basins out of service and clean them. And so what we've done to calculate those costs is to kind of look at the overall operational cost per year and how much floodwater we recharge. So our cost is anywhere from $20 to $40 an acre foot, kind of like what Don came up with. So the alternative cost in our area is imported water. And so we're really fortunate to have a benchmark to compare. If we don't do this recharge, our producer has to buy imported water to take the place of that. That cost is over $1,000 an acre foot. So we have an easy time justifying projects because the alternative is pretty expensive. Go ahead.
Yep, so we finished our project. We put in 5 miles of 500 CFS canals. It sat for until 2023 when floodwater came. And we're required to take water as part of the grant that helped build our project. We have about 240 acres of basins that we farm, and we flood during flood periods. So we were under pressure to fire up early, and what happens is the first water that comes through during a flood is loaded with sediment, absolutely. If I had realized, we probably should have waited and let the water clear out a little better before we did start recharge, because we saw plugging in some of our fields. When we finished up in 23, we went back in and scraped the sediment just skimmed the top, pulled the sediment to the side, and incorporated it into our levees. So it's an additional cost. I think we're smarter moving forward. We're going to let I mean, it looked like chocolate milk. It was so full of sediment. And just sit back, let the first flow go by, and then start when waters start clearing up.
Next question here.
You,
Question. You know, so yeah, I understand your thinking about, well, let's let the first floodwater go by, right? But what about some alternative where you might, you know, sort of have a staged process where, you know, you could have a settling basin, right? Settle some of the, and then some of that water could then flow into your recharge basins. That was just a thought that came to mind.
thought about that too.
Yeah, I'll just add that in a lot of the designs that I've seen in our district and others, they have exactly that. They have the first cell, depending on the size of the site, divvied up into multiple cells, and the first cell sometimes will be a settling cell. And sometimes, Don was mentioning letting that kind of first flush go through, but sometimes you don't know how long those flood releases are going to last, and then just the negative PR hit, and just the optics of letting floodwater go by is a different challenge. So we have not been too picky, and we try to capture as much as we can and then deal with the maintenance down the road. And maybe that financially isn't the best decision at times, but all the other factors, we think it's a good model.
So we have time for one more, and I've got it here in the center.
Morning, guys. Thanks for the presentations. They were great. My question kind of goes to you, Adam, but it could go to all three of you. And that's the idea of the reservoir re-ops that we heard in the first panel. And you guys are out on the cutting edge of forecast-informed reservoir ops to sort of control the flood pool. Can you speak to that in terms of the volume of water it represents for you folks? And maybe Bill and Don, you could take it in terms of what FIRO-type operations could do for you in the Central Valley.
Sure, John. I think, I don't know if we're going to hear more from DWR on the watershed studies, but that gets to the combination of using a reservoir and Manitowoc recharge together. So what I didn't show you in my presentation, we have a dam called Prado Dam that's upstream of us. And we've worked with the Corps of Engineers since the 1960s to temporarily hold floodwater behind that dam at a small volume that doesn't compromise the purpose of the dam. Let that water go slowly so we can then recharge it. So it's like capturing lightning in a bottle, right? If you have a dam, that really helps. So with new advances in forecasting and being able to predict AR, the atmospheric rivers and storms coming in, we can use that information now to kind of get ahead of the storm and operate accordingly. So we're doing that. We did a pilot study in Orange County at Prado Dam, and we're actually working with the Corps to make that a permanent feature. I think it's permanent now at Lake Mendocino. They were the first one to do it. We're the second, and that's going to be expanded nationwide. So it's very cool, cutting-edge technique, really reoperating existing infrastructure with the changing conditions that we have. We know that rainfall is going to be typically more intense, but shorter duration. So how do we capture that? And so reoperating infrastructure together, federal, state, local, is really going to be critical. So it's a big value for Orange County. So.
I'll add a few sidelights too. Reoperation, you have conflicting goals. You've got Bill here that wants to keep every drop that comes behind the dam for irrigation purposes, which I understand. I actually have farm in Bill's district as well. And I want all the water I can get. I don't want to turn a pump on. But then it's either you've got flood or you have nothing. We're not looking at high flows and management of dams to where you might be able to move some water down ahead of just a full out flood release. And that gets into water rights and whose water is it? And are we going to let this flow down the channel even though we're not at full flood flow? So I think there's a lot that can be done to coordinate between dam operations and actual groundwater recharge within a basin or sub-basin. But you always have the conflicting needs of the operators. So that way you don't have to say it, Bill.
I would just add one thing. I'm going to write it on a Post-it note and put it up there. Is we're in the process of working with Army Corps of Engineers. It is a very expensive, slow process by design. What makes, like Don said, conflicting interests. What makes those folks sleep well at night is an empty reservoir ready for the 18,000-year event to come. And versus we're in this Sigma world and we're just trying to reutilize a reservoir that is a massive reservoir that holds about 30,000 acre feet, Big Dry Creek Reservoir. And I mean, just trying to play out like realistically how much we're going to pay for a study, how long it potentially to design, whether we ever get to construction, how much that's going to, I mean, we're looking like a 15, 20-year process in an existing dam situation. So that's really frustrating. I think that's an area that the state needs to step in and assist.
So we are going to do one more. I have the final question here.
Thank you. Chandra Chunukuri from State Water Contractors. This question is probably for you, Adam. It was interesting that you are in the most downstream water district there in your basin.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that the upstream users are changing their behavior. So how are you tackling that? I mean, I'm assuming you are trying to protect your interests for a bit. So can you share some wisdom there on how you tackle that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Don mentioned water rights. I think what's really helped us in our watershed is the water rights are settled on the Santa Ana River. There was a judgment entered into in 1969 that was actually initiated by the Irvine Company in the 30s. So it took 30-some years to settle that lawsuit. But that lawsuit basically guaranteed us a certain amount of base flow and all the storm flow that arrived at Prado Dam. So because we've settled that matter, we don't have to worry about arguments with upstream and all that. With that said, though, there's a huge riparian habitat that developed behind Prado Dam that's home to endangered species. So we are concerned that as base flows decline, that will negatively affect the habitat. That's a whole separate issue. So we're trying to work through that and figure out what does the habitat need to support it. And that might open up some wounds there, but we're not there yet. But I think having the water rights issue settled is really helping us with Bureau and all that effort. And that's what's going to be the biggest challenge going forward in the state with this stormwater capture is whose water is it? And that's going to be the biggest nut to crack.
Okay, thank you very much. And then we can switch with the next panel.
All right.
Thank you.
Where's Rich and Stephanie and Jordon? Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the list here now. Okay, so thank you very much for being here. So we start with, and I will not mess up the order this time, it's there. So we start with Rich, and I don't know if you want to come up here.
Hi, I'm Rich Gemperle, and I'm glad to be here to talk about what we're doing at Gemperle Family Farms. I've been farming for about 25 years, and before that, I was a hydrogeologist for about 12 years. And what does that make me now? Old. But what I'm doing is looking at a farmer through a hydrogeologist lens. So I'm trying to, from the very beginning, integrating groundwater recharge and these kind of projects from when I started back in 2000. And the numbers I'm going to talk about are much smaller scale than what you heard on the last panel. But I'm probably one of the few farmers that you're going to hear that's ever going to do a positive light to Sigma. And I think it's because of my hydrogeology background, and I'm definitely in the minority there when it comes to farmers. And you're going to hear, statements about sustainable farming, but if you are in the business of groundwater mining, you really can't say you're a sustainable farmer. So that's why we're trying to push that direction in our company as hard as we can. We're lucky that most of our operations are within water districts, but we do have some in white areas, and we'll talk about kind of what we're doing in all these different areas. So the way we look at it in our farm is we've got like 3 levels. The level 1 would be basic, just using your existing infrastructure, flood-mar in the classic sense. And the second level, and I'll talk about a little bit of the do's and don'ts or some of the issues that might revolve in just basic flood-mar from a farmer's perspective. And the second level, we're just kind of integrating groundwater retention in our development as we're going, using the existing topography. You can look at this development. You see that lowland where the water is collecting. Obviously, that's not great farmland. Some people may have that greed factor where they want to plant everything and they end up, regretting it later. So we're just going to integrate those kind of features into our ranches up in the foothills mainly. And then the third level is basically collaborative projects with the GSA where there's a cost share involved, and I'll get into one of the pilot MLRP project that we're doing right now at one of our ranches in the White area. So this would be an example of one of our ranches where we're integrating the photo you saw earlier where that winter pond is basically a ground where stormwater retention happening on the ranch. The other thing in this area, so with the orchards, you've got level 1 going on where you're just using the infrastructure. So when you have existing orchards, there's 3 things that I would consider from a farmer's perspective you got to worry about. One is some of our areas in Stanislaus and Merced County, we actually have really high water table to where, and this is not perched water table, this is static water level, of 4 and 5 feet, 6 feet. And so it's essentially impractical to do any kind of stormwater or flood-mar on these properties. You got to have the right hydrogeologic setting to make it work right. The second thing I always worry about with flood-mar is when you have supersaturated soils and existing orchards and old trees, you're going to have topple. If you get into high winds, supersaturated soils. So when you're dealing with permanent crop, there's a risk associated with that from a farmer's perspective, especially with older orchards. They're very vulnerable to those kind of scenarios. And then on the third, nutrient leaching past the root zone. When you supersaturate again, and if there's a researcher that's working on that, I'd love to talk to you later on. But I'm a little concerned. We do everything with organic amendments. We front load the system for nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, and I worry about what's happening when I supersaturate, push water past the root zone, and is it carrying a lot of those nutrients with them? And then, of course, that's going to degrade water quality in the process. And let me go back to this example. So this is an interesting site. The Tuolumne River is right next to it, and this is a dredge area. So there was a lot of active dredging. So I'm working with infrastructure that's 120 years old. And what they left behind is a series of ponds. And so what we're doing now is usually utilizing that 120-year-old infrastructure to capture stormwater in those same retention basins that they created. And you can see all those purple areas are where we're doing that kind of stormwater retention. And there's that would be the LaGrange Ranch. And then the question is, in this case, where's all that water going to go? So I had to brush off my old hydrogeologic skills and look at, this is really in close proximity to the Tuolumne River. Is it just returning to the river, or is it going towards the cone of depression to the south? And so we looked at the geologic framework here, the hydrogeologic framework, and the groundwater contours with limited data, and we saw it was actually returning towards the cone of depression. So we were actually doing something good with the whole project. And now this is the third level. This is our Hall Ranch. This is in a white area, but luckily we have the TID, or Turlock Irrigation District Canal, right on the adjacent to the property. There's a multi-benefit happening here, where we're going to take that storm water and reroute it into existing reservoirs and a new reservoir. And we're going to do in lieu recharge on those years where we do have excess water available for this project. So there's in lieu going on, and there's stormwater retention coming out of the stormwater flows from the Highline Canal. At the same time, in a phase 2, we're going to rely on reverse tile drains to kind of capture some of that water and put it into the shallow aquifers in that area. That work is right now happening, and a lot of this is based on or contingent on some geophysics that we're going to be conducting in that area to see the feasibility of that. All these projects, even in the LaGrange project, we're trying to integrate hedgerows and cover crops into this development, where we get multi-benefit effect through increased biodiversity. And there's some swales in there where you can see where the tree growth isn't that great. Those are going to be rewilded and pretty much taken out of production. So to reduce it just by decreased groundwater or acreage in doing that. Okay. So in summary, on level 1, we talked about having the right hydrogeologic conditions for that, and the right orchard conditions. And on level 2, we're just kind of looking at repurposing some of these riparian areas, and of course that has some environmental aspects to it. Even though it's existing infrastructure, I always got to make sure that I'm not crossing the line on anything there. And it's really a scale issue. This is just one farm, but if you kind of project that over the entire basin and you get everybody on this same path towards sustainability, you start to see an effect. And then on the last level with the MLRP projects, from the farmer's perspective, you don't know how many years out of 10 years you're going to even get water. So when it comes time to doing the ROI and seeing the feasibility of the project, it's tough to pencil out. But it's a cost share, so there is some financial risk to it. But you're hoping for those big water years where it's going to pay off. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And now it's Stephanie from Madera County.
Thank you, everyone. Stephanie Anagnoson, Madera County. I'm going to tell you a short story that involves the synergy between two agencies, our GSA and Flood Control Agency, and how sometimes policy development takes a first, second, third try. So the two perspectives from agencies are here. Our Groundwater Sustainability Agency operates in 3 subbasins and is 220,000 acres. And as Bill was talking about FID's number of acres, I was noticing, oh my gosh, we're almost the same size as FID, but without all the water contracts. That's a little scary. Our budget is about $3 million. Much of that is spent managing allocations. And we have growers on water budgets that decrease over time because we are in a critically overdrafted subbasin. We're also responsible as a department for a flood control agency that has 2 staff. It has 26 levee miles as well as channels all the way up to our small reservoirs. It has the same challenges you'll hear other flood control agencies describe: too much vegetation, much of it invasive, too much sediment, which decreases the capacity of those channels, and then just endless rodent issues. Both agencies have financial challenges. In Madera County, we represent what people call the white area, which is area without a surface supply, but also area that has not paid fees historically. That's a big deal. So when you go from paying nothing to paying what you need to pay, you're not happy about it necessarily, and we are involved in entering year 4 of some Prop 218 litigation. In flood control, we also have the same challenge, where when you go from paying really nothing for flood control and then to paying something, even if it's only a couple bucks, you're not happy. So those are our 2 perspectives. I'll show you what that looks like visually. Here are the county GSAs. We're representing the white area on the map, so you can see that's not contiguous, is how I would describe that. And here is an example hydrograph from a sample well in the Madera subbasin. The blue points on the left are measured data, and then green is just projecting into the future what would happen with the same amount of pumping. So you can see even in the 30 years of measured data, you're having the well level for this well drop 100 feet. Flood control facilities, visually, are the green, which is project levees that are adjacent to the east side Chowchilla bypass, which is actually a different flood control agency, but one that we work closely with. So you can see there is a lot of mileage there, just not a lot of budget to take care of it. And this is what happens when you don't, or you're unable to take care of your infrastructure, in this case, the ash slough, which has a lot of arundo, an invasive plant, and then high flows and a lot of sediment that is making the capacity less than what it should be. So those are our 2 agencies, and we manage them within one department. So in early GSP planning, growers were identifying a real potential nexus between flood and getting water in the ground for recharge and SGMA. We did a survey that identified 40,000 acres that growers had available and were willing to flood. We started applying for grants for the low-hanging fruit, the projects that had existing planning work. We kept emphasizing in discussions with growers that this needed to be new water, so it wasn't storm water, just rain that's sort of infiltrating where it falls, but it is water that otherwise would leave the subbasin. That's the new part. And of course, it goes without saying it needs to be legal, but it did need to be said over and over again. And then there's the need for growers to get some sort of benefit from this. And I said we do have growers on allocations. The allocations are really what give them an incentive, because the only way to add water to that allocation is through recharge or purchasing water. So in early 2023, we started attending many weather briefings from the National Weather Service about the kind of very wet year we were about to have, and decided to get a temporary emergency policy in place, building on all this work that we had already done in 2017, 2018. And we proposed a 75% credit for the water, and the credit had to be used in 1 year, so it couldn't carry over. And making this retroactive to the beginning of the year. So I thought this was all very clever of me to do this proactively. It did not go over so well at the board. We heard from growers who were unhappy about the 75%, particularly people who thought the percent should be higher, sometimes approaching 100%. We heard that they did not want that they had to pay for permits and go through appropriate legal processes. And these were all right before the governor's executive orders in 2023. So those were all the things that we were hearing. So this policy, see there, it disappeared. It went to the board, everyone yelled, and I was like, okay, I'll try again later. So then it starts to rain. And it rains and it rains and it rains. And with the executive orders, our growers were extremely proactive. And in the recent draft of Bulletin 118, it notes 80 points of diversion within Madera County and 73,000 acre feet of water taken, mostly off the east side Chowchilla bypass and the channels that run into it. So high five to growers who were extremely proactive, but they had a strong incentive. They were on water budgets, and this was their potential way to add to that budget. Here is a well. Again, this is representative really only of itself, but if you look at the bump on the far right, you can see a bump up after the 2023 of like 50 feet. So recharge works, you just need to give growers the opportunity to help, and it needs to be legal. So we spent much of 2023 and then 2024 trying to get an actual policy in place to give people credit for all this work they were doing. We had lots of individual meetings with people, and we met with a couple of different grower groups, including the Farm Bureau. We had a resource fair with 80 growers to talk about recharge and multi-benefit land repurposing. And what we heard from people is they wanted a policy in place, they wanted credits to roll over from year to year. Some people wanted the percent credit to vary based on water type, with flood flows having a lower credit than something associated with a water right. We heard the importance of metering, and that they didn't want limits on where the water was applied, meaning they wanted to apply it to rangeland. So we ended up having some success in getting 2 separate policies adopted, one for water that's associated with the water right, one for flood flows. They are basically identical other than being separate. So it was retroactive to the beginning of January 2023. It was only for farm units, meaning you couldn't apply water on rangeland. We have no cap on how many credits, and you are able to roll those over. And then we created a pathway if you had really good soil and were one of those folks who was yelling in January about 75% not being fair. There is a pathway to getting a higher percent. And then I think one of the real wins here from a hydrogeological point of view is that you have to extract your credit from the aquifer in which you put it, meaning you cannot increase your deep well pumping to extract your credit because we are an area of high subsidence. So that is the story of the nexus with 2 agencies and our success with the recharge policy. Thank you.
Thank you. And listening on this presentation, I think I'll take you through something completely different in terms of scale. We are talking about small district now. Okay. And I'll try to go through what goes wrong, what is really the problem when you work with a small district. And I'm really talking about district where they have no staff, no grants, no funding. Eventually, there is maybe a canal that you can use. This is pretty much what we are talking about. So, because it's completely different scale. I have to say, I really want to acknowledge Department of Water Resources and actually also Department of Fish and Wildlife. They were very responsive in trying to find a way to support these districts that have really zero infrastructure from the perspective of management. And there are 3 examples, and then I will just concentrate on one. So we've been working with the Scott Valley Irrigation District, which is up north, and I will take you through the history here. And I think the message for Scott Valley has been, be persistent. Sooner or later, maybe it takes 10 years, it will work out. And then recently we started working in Sierra Valley, which is north of Lake Tahoe, which is a weird place. There is not much surface water available for recharge, but when it rains, there is a lot of runoff. It's just capturing different drainages that are not really creeks. So it's you have to be a little creative on how to really trap some of this water. And then we are working since quite a few years with Omachumani-Arnell Water District, which is along the Kazamnes River. And in this district, I think there was the first 5-year temporary permit from the State Water Board, which sounded really cool at the moment. But what we found out is that we were really lacking the infrastructure to make some of this recharge happening. So we were fighting and working a lot to get the permit, for then realizing we need more money for infrastructure, and then the funding really didn't arrive after that. But the permit is still there. So I'll take you through the Scott Valley Irrigation District example, and actually it's one of the flyer that you have in your on your tables. Why recharge in this place, which is actually, I want to show you the map. The map is in the flyer. It's really up north in Northern California. It's not that in Scott Valley there is really a lack of water. The problem is that the water is arriving all in the winter, and it's then used in the summer. There are a lot of conflicting interests because there is the need to restore fish population, and these rivers are really going, some of these rivers up there that are tributary to the Klamath, they really go dry for times over the summer. So that even if we are talking about recharge in the winter time, there was a lot of stakeholder pushback about what's the impact of this wintertime recharge into the summer flows. And how can we really set up a process that avoids having a lot of stakeholder comments and really show how we can support surface water and groundwater at the same time through a combination of winter recharge in the winter and maybe some in lieu recharge a little bit later. And there was some mentioning about in lieu recharge when surface water is available in the early irrigation season, just to take the basin through the kind of the critical times of August, September, October, which is when the fish population is coming back up. So the project is using an existing infrastructure, which is the canal, which is in orange in this map here, and which is on the east side of Scott Valley. Scott Valley is it's a Sigma basin, so we developed a groundwater sustainability plan. And the idea is that there is already a diversion point, which is the Scott River flows south-north, so that's why the diversion point is at the bottom of that rectangle down there. And the idea is, can we use the canal that usually it's only used for irrigation reason? Can we use it in the wintertime to just divert some water into the fields that are just serviced by the same irrigation district? And this sounded easy, but also because at the beginning we were thinking there is already a fish screen at the point of diversion, so it looked like everything was already kind of considered, but the pushback was really a lot. And mostly because for stakeholders, even if we are asking, what we are looking into diverting is something like 40 CFS. And the river maybe is running at 1,000 when we are diverting those 40. But we were still getting a lot of comments about, oh, you are stranding the fish. And it's difficult for people really to realize what is 40 CFS versus a river running at 1,000. It's nothing. It's not even in the error in the measurement. But unfortunately, that was a type of pushback that we got for probably almost 10 years. So just to give you an idea of the journey. And everything started, I think Ellen started this project back in 2016. And it was on 15 acres. So here you see the numbers, so you understand why I said it's very different from the previous presentation. And it was mostly to try to understand, back in 2016, what was the impact of flooding these alfalfa fields? So it's really something that the farmers need to be worried about, or should they just go for that? Then between 2016 and 2022, there were different trials, but the diversion permit was never approved because of all these comments. And then 2022, it was like in the middle of the drought, and again, it took so long to get the permit. So we got the permit approved in March, and the diversion permit ending at the end of March. So we barely had 1 month, and there was no water. 2023 was a little better, but unfortunately, there were curtailments. And what happened in 2023 is that there was, because of the curtailments, there was not even stock water, which is a little amount of water going through the canal. The canal got so dry that by the time we started recharge, it took weeks for the water just to make it through, because the canal was not holding the water in the same way it was making it in the previous years. And then finally, 2024 was our year. So we managed to run diversion for about almost 3 months. So the river was always high, and the amount of water diverted was more than 2,500 acre-feet. That it sounds so small for other basins, but here we are talking about a big percentage of the total groundwater pumping. We are talking about maybe 10%. And when we look at the groundwater sustainability plan, this is kind of really a big support in terms of sustainable yield and what it's really needed for the basin. So what it's in, and then 2025 was just so wet. There was water everywhere. The canal was just leaking. So we didn't even have a way to measure how much water was really applied to the fields. And now what we have right now, after 10 years of comments, we applied for a 5-year temporary permit. The State Water Board made the public notice, and we didn't get any pushback. So that was kind of the moment like, oh, wow, something happened. But it took 10 years, basically. And so just to show you one of the big message for the community was we started with just one field, a very small field, which is field B in this map. And most of the recharge at the beginning was going there. And then stakeholders started seeing, oh, I don't see any flooding, the water is disappearing. And then in 2024, it was really like the moment of people kind of waking up and say, oh, this looks like it's working. So everybody, all the other blue fields started, became online, let's say. So the stakeholders, they wanted the water. So we went from no to, oh, we see that something works, so let's do it. And it's really the moment when stakeholders want to participate. And so just a quick take-home message, I think looks like you need to keep trying. It may take time, and really the scale is very different depending on where you are, but in some of the smaller basins outside of Central Valley, we are really talking about not much water, but that can make a difference in terms of sustainability and sigma. So we are going, right now in Scott Valley, really, I think, because new State Water Board regulation on minimum stream flow, they are really looking into curtailment. So if they can make up 2,500 acres-feet of water, it means that maybe they will not have to curtail. They will not have to follow lands. And really, we learned a lot about different water year types, and also about what are the data that are really making the difference in terms of getting stakeholders. And with stakeholders, I also mean the agencies together and approving these projects. One thing, permits are complex. So for example, my next big thing would be in places where districts have no staff. Stakeholders really would like to do something. There is no funding. Can we find a way to not have hundreds of thousands of dollars between engineering fees and permit fees? The State Water Board fees have been increased so much this year. So some of the district will not be able to pursue these permits just because of permits fees. And so that I know that we work with wonderful people in that division at the State Water Board, so it's not, they have been very helpful, but unfortunately the fees are there and the amount of paperwork is there. And we really need to think about agencies that have nobody working for them. And yeah, and the last one is that takes time to convince the stakeholders, but then it looks like you can make it happen with just a little bit of patience. Thank you. And yeah, it's easy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jordon Navarot, and I work for Reclamation District 108. And I've been there since August of 2014, so I didn't have to raise my hand when we talked about being fresh in your career. But I am fairly new to Dunnigan Water District. Our agency took over management of Dunnigan Water District back in 2018, and we're working with them to make a splash when it comes to interacting sustainably with the groundwater basin. So Dunnigan Water District is served by the Tehama-Clusa Canal, which diverts water out of the Sacramento River in Red Bluff and brings it 110 miles down parallel with the Sacramento River to ending in the city of Dunnigan. And boy, hearing earlier about the cost of water, Dunnigan's contract with the Bureau of Reclamation has costs associated with it. We also have to pay the TC to wheel water down to us and then distribute it amongst our distribution system. That really resonated with me. Dunnigan's contract, however, there was a lot of forward thinking back in 1980 when they put in a clause allowing for groundwater recharge as one of the beneficial uses of the water. That's different than, say, RD 108 right next door to Dunnigan Water District, and a lot of the oldest rights on the Sacramento River that don't have that provision. Dunnigan is located between two significant areas of concern. We're right at the county line between Colusa and Yolo counties. We're on the Yolo side. But both of the areas circled in red on this map are areas that in the most recent droughts experienced subsidence, are seeing declining groundwater levels, and are really being focused on within the respective GSAs. So, the growers in Dunnigan Water District, as well as the board, feel like they have some responsibility to at least take a look at their own footprint and their own interaction with the basin and encourage sustainability. Put back more than they take, and do so before there's any strong regulation, whether it be from the GSAs or through SGMA, to go into demand management. And so we started thinking a few years ago about what we could do to solve these problems that were happening around us. And so Dunnigan, fortunately, has a number of ephemeral streams that run through them. So we're looking at the far right of the screen, these streams that run seasonally but never have issues with the groundwater table nearing them, and so they're always a great spot to do recharge. And that's where we decided to get started. We've been recharging in the ephemeral stream since 2022, and we got started with what I call a happy accident, where the TC needed to be, the Tehama-Clusa Canal needed to be dewatered through maintenance. We did so through one of the ephemeral streams and tracked the groundwater wells around the streams, all those green pins on the picture, and noticed that the groundwater levels were increasing very rapidly after water was placed in the creeks. And we realized that if we scaled back the releases out of the Tehama-Clusa Canal into these streams, we could actually contain the releases within the district's boundary without any water, running out the other end, and encourage recharge, concentrate recharge just within our area. This has been a super effective method for us, and we've continued to collect funding and encourage partnerships to continue this sort of recharge. And we would love to scale it up in the future. I have mixed feelings about this reintroduction of beavers, but my last bullet on this slide is just that if we could figure out a way to slow down water in these creeks, we could really increase the rate at which we could get this recharge done. So moving on from there, we wanted to do more. So we started looking at on-farm recharge opportunities. We've been able to host a couple of multi-benefit recharge opportunities with the Nature Conservancy on some of the last remaining rice fields in Dunnigan Water District. And you can see our applied volumes in 2022. That was just fall applications during the shorebird habitat window. And then after securing grant funding, the farmer decided that he wanted to open these fields up for recharge throughout the year. And so we continue to experiment on these grounds up until today. Now, in the 12,000 acre Dunnigan Water District, you only have those select fields that don't have permanent ground or permanent crops on them, rather. What's most common in Dunnigan Water District is almonds. And so when it comes to on-farm recharge on our actively growing crops, we do tend to hear a little bit of concern about, you know, you heard the mention earlier of nutrient infiltration through the soils. I know Sustainable Conservation has done some excellent work on on-farm recharge opportunities, but until we gain the confidence for some of the alternative methods that are available, we were able to find the opportunity to pilot one of these on-farm recharge reverse tile drain systems. And so in order for our board to believe that this just might work, we first did a totem survey. That's the colorful map on the screen. And the purple coloring is indicative of gravels, red is sands, and the depth slice that's shown on the map is the 10-foot layer, so just the layer that we'll be releasing the water into under this actively growing almond field. This system is now in place. This field is to be planted later this year, and so we will be exploring throughout the coming years with this system and get a feel for what types of recharge capacities we have here. Now, one thing that we are keeping in the back of our minds is that our water right, when it was being contemplated, the water rights for the Tamacalusa Canal districts were actually sized knowing that, or assuming that a portion of the water would still come from the ground. So we believe we're going to run out of water in our water right one day to continue to do these recharge projects, and that will likely happen soon. We applied for a temporary diversion permit, 180-day permit with the State Water Resources Control Board, and we proposed some alternative diversion criteria that was rejected. We ultimately wound up with what's called the 90-20 rule. And the 90-20 rule, the bright red bars on the screen are the total of 18 or so hours that water would have been divertible under that diversion permit. This map also details the blue line, which is the Sacramento River flows passing Wilkins Slough near my home district, Reclamation District 108. And every time those surpassed the flat pink line, we were actually on flood patrol, looking out for, you know, catastrophic flood events in the Sacramento River. And so this is just to show that there are some serious concerns with the divertibility under the 90-20 rule. And I think that's important to mention. I'm out of time, so I guess I'll skip on the 1242.1 opportunity. I know folks are interested in experimenting with that, so here's my contact information at the end, and if anybody wants to reach out, we can discuss it there.
Okay, so it looks like we have time for 2 or 3 questions. Oh, Eric and Don.
Thank you so much for sharing your different perspectives. My question is directed to all 3 of you, and I think you'll have different answers. When it comes to finding land for recharge and considering buying it, there's been other ideas toyed out there about easements. Have you explored that? Has there been any pitfalls with that? And do you think that is a viable option for considering recharge and then working with the landowners on a workable solution?
I could just talk for the East Turlock GSA. There's estimated maybe 20,000 acres that might go out of production. And a lot of that ground, I know that in Eastside Water District, there's a large amount of acreage that's ideal for groundwater recharge, and now at bargain basement prices because of the impact of Sigma. So Sigma actually is driving the market, for some of these recharge basins to, snap them up, what 15 years ago would have been 5 times that price. So I think it's kind of working itself out essentially on its own. Yeah.
Yeah, our goal is to empower growers to house these recharge basins and figure out the right incentive strategies to do so, and I think that might be consistent with what Madera is doing.
Yes, that's right. We have no money. So we work in partnership, and growers allow the water to percolate on their land, and then they get a credit. If the county GSA is contributing, like doing a permitting process, we would cost share based on the proportional contributions to it.
I think Dawn here.
Thanks. Jordan, a question. When you're doing the reverse tile drain system, are you guys filtering the water prior to injection into the tile drains?
Yes, so the orchard irrigation system has 4 sand media filters, and we're going to use those before injecting in through the tile drain system to avoid plugging the perforated pipes. However, it's not, any more extreme or complicated than that.
So once they get the orchard in, are those filters going to be in use for the orchard or for the trees? And then you're thinking about doing it in the wintertime when trees are dormant? Just kind of curious what the plan.
Yeah, we think we can operate that reverse tile drain system in between the irrigation demands of the orchard. And so there's just a valve that'll allow the water to spill into the standpipe for that tile drain system past the filters. That infrastructure is already in place.
Great. Yeah. I as far as land available, when you're in an area, when you're in a GSA that's critically overdrafted, you've got growers left and right that want to put the land into recharge because they're not going to be farming it anyway if they don't do it.
The next question.
More question? Oh, there.
Thank you everyone for your really great presentations. My question was for Stephanie. I was wondering if you've been able to quantify any increases in long-term groundwater levels with the 75 to 90% groundwater extraction that your subbasin is implementing. I didn't catch when that policy went into place for your GSA, but if anything.
Sure. We adopted a policy in spring of 2024 that was retroactive to the beginning in January. And I think our annual report would have the increase in storage from that, but I don't know the number off the top of my head. Sorry.
Okay, I think more question, Megan? One more? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. You, Marisa.
Is there any? I have some transitional things.
Okay.
If you want to wrap it, though.
No, I think
Okay,
you
great.
can go in.
Thank you, everybody, for the questions and for the wonderful panelists. Yeah, sorry. You haven't met me yet, and I am not on the stage, but I wanted to call your attention to, before we dismiss you for lunch, wanted to call your attention to 2 resources that are on your table. The first is a bit of a fact sheet on the Scott Valley Irrigation District's recharge project. This is a snapshot story that this Floodmar network helped to put together. So if you have a similar success story related to Floodmar, we encourage you to go to the purple half sheet on your paper and jot down some information about it. And even if you are not interested in a fact sheet, if you do have a success story that you want to highlight or provide some thoughts about, We encourage you to fill this out at any time today or even tomorrow. We have over there on the opposite side of the room 3 sheets of paper split by region. So there's tape over there. If you at any point want to work on this, if you have some stories that you want to share, if you want to provide your contact information, we will get in contact with you about putting together a fact sheet similar to this one, if you'd like. And with that, we will reconvene at 1:30. So I will dismiss you guys.
So now there's 2 pieces of homework. Big
Yes.
idea on this wall, success stories on that wall, and enjoy your lunch. And let's thank the panel.
Thank you.